Honest community, before we dive into this episode, we've got a quick free favour to ask. If you enjoyed the Honest Property podcast, please hit like, follow and subscribe wherever you're listening from. It helps us grow, reach more people and bring on guests that you want to hear from. Thanks for being a part of this. We appreciate you more than you know.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Honest Property podcast with your hosts Becky and Ruth. And today we have our girl Vikki on again. She was just telling us a really funny story about how she tried longboarding, because I don't know if you know, Ruth's a longboarder, and Vikki also felt like she also wanted to give it a go. And it didn't go quite as well.
I also at a toy superstore, just nearly breaking my neck. Yeah,
I'm proud of you for trying. Exactly. So Vikki was on a previous episode. I'm talking about legacy guardians, and she's called the Death Angel. So basically, property is, as we all know, is generational wealth, and but people just don't know how to actually do the generational wealth bit and how to pass it down. So we covered a previous episode on that. I will put that in the show notes below. But in today's episode, we're going to be talking about tenant selection and communication, which is a really important topic because, again, once there's so much information out there that's about how you get the property, there's very little information really about what do you do after that?
It's like how you look to the property, not just by also updating the property. It's not a set and forget. You've also got to update it over time, but also how do you look after the tenants to make sure your tenants look after the property too? So here we have Vikki today again to basically explain. She is like the queen of having great relationships with her tenants. So we need to discuss all of her tips.
Yeah, I mean, I've started saying it because I'm like, I have 3 tenants who've been with me over a decade. Like, it sounds, I'm like, get me.
That's like you've made a genuine, like a true home for those people. And that's really fulfilling.
Yeah, like one of them's moved into a bigger house. I mean, I would say it's probably more like 4 tenants actually, because that one, they split up and now I have the husband and the wife, the husband and ex-wife, both living in one of our properties. So he's also been our tenant for that amount of time, really. And it's just like, I don't think people realise that if you're putting people in a home that is very suitable for you, like we only have 3 bedroom plus with an outdoor space, that potentially you need to think about that in the same way as picking, a husband and a wife, because it's a long-term relationship if you get it right. If you get it right at the start.
Also, with Vikki as well, from the previous podcast, so you do need to listen to that one. She's also someone who's created a community of houses where she has housed, like she just said, many families who are all connected to each other. She's made a commune.
Yeah. To be fair, we drove past one of ours yesterday, and there's a for sale sign up on the other half of the semi, and I was like, Sean, we could get that one. And then Teresa's sister is sound, and we can move her in next door. Probably don't even want to live next door to each other, but I'm like planning their whole lives together.
I love how you're like, Teresa's sister, her partner's son could be there.
Yeah, Sean was driving, and he was like, are you searching for it? How much is it up for? I'm like, I'm on Patson's website, I'm getting it. And he's like, I think we should go and look at it. I'm like, okay. But yeah, we're quite, like, it's a bit weird, like, owning a full semi, both sides. But yeah, it's interesting, it's good.
I love that because it makes genuine, like, it's a win-win for everyone.
So, and especially with like landlords in the UK, there's a lot of hate and discrimination towards landlords, but you're actually doing something which is bringing awareness to landlords who are actually trying to make a difference. They're not all just greedy, grabbing money, wanting to make money. There is also an ethical and heart-led side of the reason why there are landlords who are getting into making sure that they can provide homes for people that can't afford.
Yeah, and I'm very much, when I'm talking to people who want to get into it, I'm very much like, this is not an investment strategy, it is actually a vocation. Like, it's the same as people who want to be a doctor because they want to take care of people and make them feel better. Like, I am a landlord because I want to provide good, secure homes for families who deserve them, you know what I mean? Families who maybe otherwise wouldn't be getting a mortgage, and sort of, there is a massive issue with social housing at the minute. And we're bridging that gap, so to speak, for those families. It's like, I think people don't take the importance of it seriously enough, and I get a lot of it. Yeah.
It's customer service. Like if you're running a business, if you're an entrepreneur and you're running a small business, you
want client satisfaction.
Exactly.
Don't you?
You
Really?
want that. You have to make sure that you've got customer service that leads on. You don't just
Yeah.
get the customer and then you go bye. That's it. Like it's the same with also having a property and people who live there. You want to make sure that their long-term relationship goes well. Otherwise, there could be disastrous things that could happen.
Yeah, and I think like it financially makes sense to pick a tenant that is going to work for your circumstances. So not just the ones who have got, obviously on paper, they've got to be good, they've got to have the right income, they've got to be able to pay the rent. But sort of, in terms of finding tenants, make them do certain things to find out how good they are at filling in online forms, how well they communicate any issues with finances and all that sort of stuff, and how they, like, I do make them jump through a lot of hoops before they get the property, because at the end of the day, like, if you're going to rent a car, you have to sign a contract and you have to, take care of that car. And it's with anything that people are renting or hiring, like, there's always going to be certain things you need to do. I mean, if we got the solar panels, we had to be credit checked. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's all these things that you've got to do. But then the other thing is, do I think I could communicate with this person for the next 10 years? Like, consider that.
Yeah.
Could I communicate with this person when they've lost their job? Could I communicate with this person when something terrible happens and I have to figure out what to do? Do you know what I mean? And I think there's a few things that I've put in place over the years that have really helped with that.
Could you go into what those things are?
Yeah, so basically how I do it is I do the normal open rent, put the ad out because it's the cheapest way to get it out there. And then everybody has to fill in a Google form, and the Google form goes through various different things. And they have to do that before they even get a viewing, because otherwise you're just wasting your time. We did that because of lockdown. We didn't want to be showing too many people around, but actually it worked out really well. So the form kind of goes through, first of all, we've just added this in. Do you have any communication sort of needs? So some people don't like texting because they haven't got that level of reading, for example, because obviously we're at the lower end of the market. Would you just let us know if there's anything you need us to work with on that side of things? And then the form goes through all of the different criteria. So it asks if they've got a next of kin, because for us, if anything happens and the communication's just gone, at least we've got somebody else to ring. It's usually like their mum or like somebody like that. And if we aren't getting communication with rent, we'll be like, we've been trying to get in touch with this person. We're just checking they're okay, kind of thing. And usually,
because we had a tenant who had some mental health issues, and we didn't have a next of kin for her.
No, I was thinking of another tenant, and then we ended up.
She didn't have a next of kin either.
But we did have a situation with a young tenant who wasn't paying the rent, and then we had to contact their dad.
Oh yeah. Well, he was a guarantor.
He was a guarantor.
Yeah.
We apologized. Oh yeah, he was a guarantor, not next of kin, but he was like apologizing. But it's just so important.
Have another.
Because you've got to think about it. If somebody loses their job or whatever, it's their mental health will be like shit. I don't want to talk about this. Head in the sand, kind of thing. And it just makes it a little bit easier to have that person as a backup, because it's helping that other person as well. Like it's sort of saying like, come on, we're here to support you, and you need to have that other support, and to know that they've got that other support around is important for us. We've not used it very often, but just to know that somebody's got that support is good. And then we go through things like, we ask really obvious things like, we don't provide cookers in our house because, like, I think I mentioned this before, some of the families have got like 7 kids, and the cookers were just, the elements were blowing and there was more problem, and we're very like low maintenance. So we, obviously they've all got electric cookers that they plug in. I mean, the council do that, so I assume it's allowed. And so we'll say, we don't provide any white goods, including a cooker. Is that okay? We'd say things like, what is your income? But please, if you just...
Sorry, just a job.
Yeah.
Is it literally just kitchen storage units?
So there's a gap for the cooker, and a gap for the washing machine, and a gap
and
for...
it's just surfaces and storage.
And then the council provide that for you.
That's really good.
So the tenants you should just get them off Facebook, secondhand, like, and just plug them in. Or like, one of our tenants moved from a house that did have a cooker built in, and she moved into one of our new ones and it didn't have a cooker built in. So we just loaned her the 300 quid and she paid her back £50 a month. Like, it's just is what it is. And we just don't, it's just, we were finding that was one of the maintenance bugbears, was the cooker's gone off. And I'm like, oh, it's not really our responsibility. And then, yeah, otherwise it's like, what else do I put down? I put down things like, their income. But I say, if you want to put down, like, I get PIP every 2 weeks and it's this much, I get universal credit and it's this much, I get this and this much, and then I do the calculation for them and what their income would be. I do that. I think what I'm also going to start doing is maybe talking to carer groups to help them understand that if they've got an older son with autism, they can apply for more expensive houses because their son would get a son or daughter would get a 1-bedroom rate or a shared accommodation rate, plus they would get whatever theirs is. And I don't think a lot of people know that they can do that, and it's putting them at a disadvantage on what would be good properties. And then we just say, like I say about the communication, how we need them to report repairs on time, but we're prepared to do it in a way that suits them and all that sort of stuff. So it's just getting a clear idea on who they are, whether they've got a homeowner guarantor, whether they are prepared to take that rent guarantee cover instead. It's pretty much non-negotiable for us now. And it's just, I think the guarantor element of it was, remember the tenant we were talking about the last time who ended up on the run and 7 kids going into care, like that sort of stuff, you just can't do anything about that. But if we had have had that rent guarantee insurance or a homeowner guarantor for him, it would have just been that little element of security for us, knowing that if anything went wrong.
So do you get that for all your properties as rent?
From now on, either a homeowner guarantor, like we got a homeowner guarantor on this current one, but we always check the title deeds to make sure the names match and stuff like that. So you've got to be like extra, because the reference company that we use were like, approved. They have self-certified that they have a house. I was like, no.
It's interesting that the reference company don't check that deep. Like, you'd think that they should.
No, well, it's, the title deeds have gone, title deed checks gone up now at £7, but it's still not. Like, if it's gonna mean you're covered for X amount of damages or whatever, then happy days.
Damage control.
Yeah. And then we obviously do the right to rent stuff as well. So we'd just say, yes, I'm a UK citizen with a passport or whatever, and then other, because we just like to leave it free for people to say, like, I've got this visa or I've got this work permit or whatever. And then the reference check company that we have, it only costs an extra £2 and they do all the right to rent checks as well. So it's mid.
But what made you, because you're so passionate about making sure that you provide homes and have a voice for the tenants, and I think especially in the property space, it can sometimes feel a little bit like it's all about the landlord. Oh, woe, the landlord. And it's like as if like the only thing about being a landlord is just having maximum profit.
Yeah.
I think that can be so damaging because in the social media space, if there's not a balance to be able to see both sides. Otherwise it gives landlords a really bad name if that's the only image that's painted on social media. And what you're doing is kind of disrupting that space by being very open and very loud, which we appreciate, about actually, no, there's two sides to a coin. So could you explain like where that passion has come from of wanting to be the voice for tenants?
Yeah, I think obviously when I've known my tenants for so long, like I know what they're going through to a degree. It's not like I'm speaking to them like every day or every week or even every month. But when I do catch up with them, like I do know a bit more about their life than normal landlord would. But I think like because we adopted our little girl and we've been through all the sort of process of why children these days aren't being adopted because people are dropping them off at fire stations. Do you know what I mean? They're being taken from families who potentially don't have that secure base and that home that child deserves. And I think that's really pushed it home on how important a secure base is for the children in the family, and how much it actually relieves the parents when they know they don't have to worry about the property element, where they're going to live and being kicked out. And like my friend, for example, her landlord said for over 12 months that he was going to sell the property, but then did absolutely nothing. Just did nothing. Like, and she would contact him and say, hi, just asking for an update on what you're doing with regards to selling the property, and he'd say, I'll come out and we'll have a chat about it, and then he would never come out and chat about it, and it's just like,
that's her life.
People, it leaves. I mean, she's got a full-time job, works in Starbucks, good tenant, keeps the house nice, partner was a builder, like there was no issues there. But like for her to be in that kind of limbo position with children and with trying to live your life, it just constantly plays on your mind, you know what I mean? And it makes the rest of life harder. I was speaking to randomly. I was trying to get a bit of social media content, so I drove past my tenant Chris's house and was just like, selfie, this is my house, just popping by. And he was like, you all right, Vicky? I was like, hi, Chris. And he's the one who, obviously, they broke up, and he was in 3 different properties within 3 years, and the landlord sold the property every single time and ended his tenancy. And he came to us saying, like, Vicky, I'll have any house, wherever it is, doesn't really matter. And I was like, I've got this house here, you probably won't want to live there. And he's like, I love it, I'll live there. And he's been there like 2 years now, and he's wanting to put laminate flooring down at his own cost and all this different stuff. And he's just making it a real home. And I said to him when I saw him, I says, Chris, how do you see how we are as landlords? Like, how does that benefit you? And he's like, Vicky, now that I'm in one of your houses and I can just make it my own home.
Yeah.
This is a guy with black dragon wallpaper in the living room. Yeah. I was like, Sean, who let Chris put black dragon wallpaper in the living room? He's like, you'll be there forever, don't worry about it. But he was just like, now that I've got this secure base for me and my 3 kids, and even Julie's ex-partner like knows where he is and knows he's happy, it just makes the rest of my life just easier. Just I don't have to, that one thing of knowing where I live and knowing I can make it my own home is just like, it was invalid. Like he said, it's just, I can't put a value on it. Like it's, and I tell so many people how good you are as landlords, and they're totally like, oh my God, I wish my landlord was like that.
But it goes back to like customer satisfaction. I know we don't want to keep saying it because it is a human life, but like there is it relates, because if you're seeing a tenant as what's the long-term outcome for that tenant, obviously that's a great investment if you can have a long-term tenant that's going to make a house property their actual home, and allowing them to be able to really make it their home means then you'll have someone that you've already built a relationship with that you can trust to keep it in good condition. If you're constantly having to keep turning over your tenants,
and
again and again.
The biggest risk to any business is the unknown, isn't it? And a new tenant is completely unknown, whereas a current tenant, if you keep in your good relationship with them, then, I mean, I'm always saying, like, when people are saying, I need to get my rents up to market value, and I'm like, yes, you do, but on the same hand, if we're increasing our rent by £100 a month versus £50 a month each year, that's 600 quid difference. If it's empty for 2 or 3 months while you're looking for a new tenant, it's a waste. It's a waste. So you've got to weigh the two things up. Having a good tenant, good long-term tenant, and doing reasonable increases. I don't think any of my tenants, I rang them when I did it the first time because it made us feel sick because I hadn't increased their rent for 7 years. And I was just like, Julie, you've probably heard in the news that all of this is happening. Like, we're going to have to put your rent up. Like, our insurance is more, this is more, that is more. And she was like, yeah, I was expecting it. Like, I wondered why you didn't do it last year.
It happened to us as well. We hadn't put our rents up for a long time, and then it made us feel sick.
Yeah,
we were like, oh, but actually everyone was fine about it because we hadn't done it for so long. They also were expecting it too.
We didn't put it up
by a lot,
by loads. It was just a bit.
Like me and Sean have been like, well, this one actually needs to get to this level, and this is how we're going to get there. So we've kind of got like 3 years worth of that kind of thing. Yeah, and I think what we would do now, because it's a different world now since all the interest changed. Yeah. So it's a completely different situation. And even if we're not putting people's rent up, we're still going to send them a letter or an email saying, hi, just to let you know, this is a yearly rent review. We're not putting your rent up. Yeah. But just to let you know, this is the going rate.
it's meant to, yeah.
And then it just keeps us aware of the going rate, it keeps them aware of the going rate. And because we don't plan on selling any, but you never know.
Transparency for everyone.
Yeah, you never know if you're going to need to sell. And then if you do go to sell and your rents are so much lower than everywhere else, then tenants are going to find it very difficult to move on, because they're
important to remind just
your tenants
in the loop with what is
the reality,
and what is meant to be happening according to procedure and policy with rentals. This is what happens every year.
Because if you don't have that transparency,
they're going to be shocked even if they leave, and they went with somebody else and they were doing that.
And that's when you'll have that disruption in communication with the tenants. Then go, oh, you're just trying to get more money out of me. But if you are so transparent about how the market works, then it gives them an education as well.
They don't live in delusion about this is the flat rate for the rest of my life. No, life goes up.
Yeah, I think if you pick the tenant in the first place based on how they speak to you about finances, then these sort of communications are easier. Like, for example, we had a tenant who, she was getting the 2-bed rate, and our older son's like 25 or 26, and he gets a 1-bed rate. And we were like, right, in August, because for 3 years they hadn't changed the LHA rate, so we hadn't upped our rent. But in April, last year, they obviously upped the rents by a canny amount. So we said, this is your new rent, can you send it off to the council and just get it approved? And I did text her, and I know she's the one that needs a phone call. And so she was just like, I can't believe you're charging that much rent for our house. And I just picked up my phone and I was like, hiya, it doesn't really affect you. Like, this will get signed off by the council. It's not going to make any difference to your life. Like, this is what the council will pay. And just to let you know, we're going to use that to subsidise another single parent who's in a home who hasn't got their mother-in-law or mother living with them.
So letting them know where that money
is. Like, I'm trying to manage my full portfolio and not just you. And I'm trying to do the best by all my tenants. And she was like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
It's just communication, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just that simple. And I just think because people, I think social media and the way the communication goes around financial freedom is about cash flow. And yes, it is about cash flow. But on the other hand, it's kind of like, these are not cash machines. These are people. If you want a regular return on your money, buy stocks and shares, like, do another investment. Whether it's somebody moving from Newcastle down to London to work and wants to live in an HMO, whether it's a family like what we rent to, like any sort of tenant it is, you have to speak to them and consider them based on, like, I had that reel, didn't I, where it was like Tinder for tenancies, and it's like, you need to match that to what you want at the same hand. Like, it's not just about the money. If you're
Tinder for tenancies, someone please make that. That's such a good idea.
Landlord.
I could actually make that, to be fair. I have the skills.
Yeah,
but
do it, Vicky.
But like, if you're going travelling for 12 months and want to rent out your property, don't rent it to a family who wants to live there forever. Like, it's just common sense, isn't it? It's like, if you're talking to somebody who's maybe just like wanting to live there for 12 months before they maybe move in with a boyfriend, or they want to like more of a short-term thing, or they've probably only got a year left to save before they're going to look to buy their own property, something like that. Like, actually ask the tenants about why they're wanting to move in and try and match it. I know not always you're going to get in that situation, but try and at least make the tenants aware that, like, I'm renting this because I'm going travelling abroad. Like, And even if you're getting a letting agent to manage that, you need to let that letting agent know those sort of criteria so that they can match the tenant to that.
Hey guys, if you're new to property investing, we know exactly how hard it is to figure out where to start. That's why we created the Beginner's Roadmap. It's your guide to mastering the fundamentals so that you can move forward with clarity and confidence. Plus, you'll gain access to our free community for ongoing support. Just hit the link in the show notes. Now, let's jump back into this episode.
Yeah. So what else? Is there anything else on the Google form? Is this your main verification strategy, or is there anything else after the Google form?
Then I get, so the Google form, I've set it up so that I've got like this Zapier automation. So when the form gets sent, it sends an email to them confirming their name, telephone number and email, and saying we will be in touch on this date. And then it sends the same email to me, so I know that somebody's applied through the form. And then I usually put the ad up for a week, and then after a week I'll pick 3 to 5 people to show around the house. And then it's more fluffy then. It's like vibes, isn't it? It's just like, You'd be like them. I think they'll be a good tenant, and yeah. So it's.
I think that's a female superpower because you can. I think that's a really good process. So it's like, logically, this makes sense. Now let's see if this is like a genuinely going to work person, like human to human, because that is a really important element to not miss out. Because we've been in situations in the past where like, logically, this makes sense. And this comes to like business relationships as well. But then person to person, the vibe wasn't quite right. And you already know it's going to be a short-lived, it's not going to be a long-term thing.
No, I know exactly what you mean. You're just like, there's something about this that I just.
It's a Tinder date. Like somebody has like got the best profile. And you're like, beautiful, they've ticked off all my wants and likes. And then you meet them and you've got the ick. And you want more. Like, that's just, I can't pin down exactly what it is. But this is not happening.
Yeah, but try explaining that to your husband, who's a very black and white person. And it's just like, it's like Spock. He's just like, yes, but on paper, these are the best people. And I'm like, yes, I know that. But I just don't get a good vibe. It's like,
but it's true. It's
happened
true.
to us.
And yeah, and it always is. It always is the case. It's never not been the case.
Obviously, you've probably heard the same things as me. Like the next thing to develop after your brain is your gut, and they've got a very good connection together. And you've got to listen to both. But I would say it kind of goes for me. Brain, you get a viewing. Gut, you're definitely going through a holding deposit. And heart has to be like, man, I really want to rent to these guys. Like, if you've got, I had two, this one that I've done now, I had two tenants that were equally like, I would have given either of them the house. But my heart would have been like, no, I want to give that it because of X, Y, and Z. And Sean was like, no, but like you like these people equally as much and you think they'll be just as good a tenant, but their income's like 30% more. So we'll have reasonably, on a business mindset, we have to go with that other family who need this house just as much as they do. Do you know what I mean? It's just, I find that quite tough. Because I'm like, yeah, but Sean, if we don't take these on, I'm not sure who else would take them on. And he's like, but we can't, like, you've got to find that fine line and between being an actual charity and having a nice life where you're not putting yourself in a situation where you're like overly invested as well.
It's a balance. Everything is yin and yang, like masculine and feminine, like logic and an emotion or guts, instinct. And it is balancing it. Because if you just went with your heart and your emotion and didn't think logically at all, then it's just going to be out of whack.
Yeah.
So it is finding that balance. But I think your system of do the Google form, that'll get you in the door. We'll check out if our Tinder match actually is successful or not on the date. I love that analogy, actually. So once you are happy with your new relationship, how do you maintain?
So going back to this one that I'm doing now was really, really interesting, was that basically the landlord refused to give a reference. And so he used the system we use is called Canopy, and it said refused, but I had his number and the tenant had said the landlord does want to give you a reference. So I rang him and he was just like, I can't give you any information on the maintenance of the property. They do pay their rent on time, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, and I had her on speaker and Sean was like, oh, I've been really put off by this now. And I'm like, Sean, we can't just not give them it based on like what a landlord said to her. And I rang the potential tenant, and was like, hi, unfortunately a landlord won't give you any reference for the maintenance of the property. And she was like, why? And I was like, oh God. And I was like, but like, we're prepared to come over and have a look at your property and have a walk around, blah, blah, blah. And between me and you, the landlord had to give her a few more details. Sean goes and looks at the property, and Sean's like, that landlord was talking
rubbish.
Yeah, he said it had been all newly renovated, they'd spoiled the kitchen cupboards, they'd done this, they'd done that. And Sean was like, 1, it hasn't got a thermostat, so they can't control the heat in the house. So 2, it's getting damp everywhere. And the reason the kitchen's getting ruined is because it's so cold and damp and like humid, and it's just not a good property. Like, it's just not where I would
Isn't it?
Not something that he says I can't even, it's in a licensing area. He's like, I can't even see the council signing that property off to be licensed. Whereas when you heard it from the landlord, it was a completely different story altogether. So Sean was like, I'm quite glad I just went around and had a look. And that genuinely is the first time we've ever went to somebody's house and had a look before we offered them a tenancy. And I said to Sean, I'm like, to be fair, if I was that landlord and I wasn't happy with them living in the house, I said that was what was strange about it. If he wasn't happy with them, why was he telling us? So like if it was me, I'd be like, yeah, they're great tenants, move them on, like get them out of my house, sort of thing. Yeah, when it's funny how perceptions are very different depending on who you're talking to.
Going to say as well, like you also, I don't think there's a lot of landlords would actually go out their way as well with a reference to go, I'm going to go and check that landlord's house. You would automatically a lot of the time just go next. You know, you actually took the time to go.
I mean, they were jumping through all the hoops, you know what I mean? Homeowner guarantor, the income for the area, like the combined income off the two parents, off the charts. And I had already said to them, we've got another property coming up. Like 5-minute drive away. No one will want to be in this area. Like, and I was just like, right, cool. That's what I want to hear. Really. And they've just done everything. We got a letter off the NHS confirming their employment and all of these different things. And I was just like, the way they're talking and communicating with me. And I said, the only thing, she sent me an email at like 5 o'clock in the morning. Sean was like, he says, that's just an education piece. This is Sean. I just need to tell them that we don't respond to emails or text messages at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, yes, no, I know that. So yeah.
Communication. Where do you, regarding boundaries, I think you are a WhatsApp person, aren't you, with your tenants? Because you're quite...
Yeah. So WhatsApp's got this new thing where you can do groups. So we've got a houses group and then we've got all the WhatsApps with all the tenants. But yeah, we just use WhatsApp, and WhatsApp goes on Do Not Disturb from like 7 o'clock, I think it is, like for everything, for all groups. And like we make it very clear when we start that like unless it's a real emergency and you're locked out in the middle of the night, like do not be contacting us. You send us a WhatsApp in the middle of the night, we won't be replying. And like things like my phone goes on Do Not Disturb from 9 o'clock for calls. So if you ring me, you'll have to ring twice to get through, sort of thing. Like that's how it all works. So it's like, and I was asked the other day, like, how many emergencies do you generally have? And honestly, like, there's never something that we desperately need to go out. And like, and even if we get a message on a weekend, if Sean's not doing anything, he will just be like, yeah, I'll just pop over now and get it done. But majority of times I just reply saying we'll get back to you on Monday. Like if it gets any worse, let us know. But most of them are quite reasonable like that. We're talking about emergencies, and I think obviously the wind, we can all say it's like the worst thing for landlords, isn't it? It's like when you've got when you've only got one. Yeah, when you've only got one roof to deal with, wind is concerning. When you've got 17 roofs,
we're like praying.
I just don't want to get a message and be like, if several tiles have fallen off.
Yeah. It's the fences mainly for us.
It's like roofs and fences, it's windy, and you just think like, if something does happen, we just send a text to a roofer, say this person, get in touch with them, sort it out.
Do you ever put them in the roofer's contact details in the WhatsApp group as well, or you just keep that separate from the tenant?
No, we sort of
communicate
in the middle for that. So, but the roofer will contact them directly. So we'll say, we've given the roofer, can we give the roofer your contact details? Yes. And then share the contact details, and then the roofer just organises it with them. But sometimes when things aren't going as quickly as they want them to, like you do have to say, guys, listen, if this was our own house, we couldn't get the roofer out any quicker. Like we're not doing it.
Expectation.
Yeah. And just say like the roofer will be out as quick as he can. But everybody's in the storm, not just you. Like you need it.
Yeah.
That's
how it's that are gonna need to be seen too, not just yours.
Yeah, and most people are like, yeah, okay. Some people aren't, and they're no longer our tenants because it ends up that they move out. Does you know what I mean? Like, but we do. Like I said to you guys when you were starting self-managing, I think the only thing that we do outsource is boiler cover. We just have cover, and it makes our life easier.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to, like, going forward, especially with making sure that landlords and tenants, because social media and like the newspapers just don't like landlords at all. Well, what do you think is your solution for bringing tenants and landlords together and like
Respect humanity.
Yeah, because I think there's lack of also humanity for landlords, and it's always swayed just towards the tenant. So how do we work together? Like, what's your solution for working together to make sure that both are seen more human?
Yeah, so I think like I try and relate this industry back to online gambling that I used to live in and used to work in, and used to live the life. That got legislated, it got taxed, it got this, that, and the other. So the reason the government do that is to professionalise the industry, right? So that industry now, probably 8 years later, is mainly big corporates. There's no like two-man bands like me and Sean running bingo websites. Do you know what I mean? It's the Paddy Powers and all the big guys, all the tombolas and all of them, because they can cover compliance. They provide the clients, the end user, with the service they deserve. They can also, this sounds awful, they can also take the big fines if they do something wrong. Whereas a small fry for the government, they're just thinking, oh my God, we've only got, housing court is terrible. Like, we haven't got the infrastructure to make it any better, really. So what we need to do is decrease the number of landlords. So you can see the theory behind it, and everybody's very upset about it. And the only thing we can do about it is be more professional, and it is vocation. And it is, like you say, everybody knows online gambling isn't good for society in general, right? I knew that when I worked in it. But housing is the foundation of society, and I genuinely believe houses are the most important thing. Homes, especially. Homes are the most important thing for anyone in life. Doesn't matter where you are in your life, knowing that you've got somewhere you can go back to and it's always going to be there, is that ultimate security, and it really helps with everything else in your life. But I don't think most people getting into this are actually considering how important that property is to the person they're giving it to. And I think if I call myself a home provider, you know this, I always put landlord in brackets so that people know what that means. But I'm a home provider, like whether I had HMOs and I was housing students, like, or whether I'm housing families like I do, I can't imagine going to uni and not having that secure place that I know I would live, that's safe and warm. And I lived in halls all 3 years because I couldn't process moving into a house because they were all horrendous. So I just lived in halls all 3 years, had to do extra things to get that, to do that. I had to be vice president so that I could live in halls. But like everybody, I think everybody, it doesn't matter what you're doing, needs that security of that secure base. Once landlords get that understanding and understand why the government are doing what they're doing, is only to make us better. It's not, it's to get rid of these guys who are doing things like Section 21 Section 21 shouldn't be a thing. Sorry, most people think it should. I know they do. But I don't think, I've evicted 3 tenants, and we've gone through the whole process through to bailiffs, and never once have we used a Section 21 to remove someone from a home unless they hadn't paid the rent. I just think it's more important than that. I was talking about that other housing development company who evicted 87 tenants 3 weeks before Christmas, sent them eviction letters 3 weeks before Christmas. Like, they couldn't have waited 4 weeks and done it in January so that family could have a nice last Christmas. It's just putting people before profits is what you have to do. Like, you have to.
Yeah. How are you supposed to survive as well?
Yeah, there's no way you can do this without having empathy for the people who are living in that property and calling it their home, because everybody's in a better situation then. They take better care of the house. And I'm not saying there's not bad people. I don't think there's people who move into a house and want to wreck it.
Yeah.
There's some mental health issue there if it gets to a point where a home's like that, or the landlord hasn't provided a home that is to a decent enough standard for that person to be able to manage that. Because everybody gets little bits of condensation around the windows in the winter, like we all, and Sean will be like, I sometimes feel like he's like a home maintenance mentor for these tenants who maybe tenants who haven't lived in a nice warm house, decent house, is like, they're like, just this, that and the other, and we're like, no, you need to like open the windows a little bit every so often, and you need to do this and you need to do that, and he just helps them through that. Like if the pressure goes on your boiler, he'll like say, well, first step is the pressure down on your boiler, and this is
what Sean should do. He should do like little YouTube
videos. I know.
And then you can send them to all of your tenants.
Like, okay, you've got this issue. This is how you can deal with it.
That's working with your tenants instead of just making them guess. Like, especially like you said, if tenants are having to move constantly and they haven't had the chance to be in a home for a long time, that's something that's not going to be on the top of their priority list unless you show them. And
they're usually so like, I know this sounds awful. This is probably not the best way to describe it. But if you adopt a pet from a pound and like they've not been treated very well in the past and they're scared of everything on, like you take on that little dog and like it's peeing on the carpet, but it's not its fault because it's like scared. Whereas a lot of these tenants are quite scared to report repairs because they're worried that they're going to be evicted because they're reporting repairs. So we have to make sure that them tenants, like when they move in, we're like, guys, anything, we don't want to be in and out of your property for no reason. Like, anything to do with water, anything to do with electrics, anything to do with like the gutters or the roof, ring us. Drop us a text, whatever, like just let us know about it and we'll sort it. We'll get that done. And just trust us that is what we're going to do. And a lot of the times when they've moved into a new property, we'll even go so far as to say, you guys are the first ones in this property. There's going to be little bits and pieces that we've missed potentially because we're not living there and we're not running the heating all day and we're not doing this and doing that. And if you see it, let us know and we'll get it sorted. And then once it's to a level where everything's fine, happy days. Like so I think it's, when you're self-managing, I think it sounds like this is taking a lot of time, but this is kind of like rare. Do you know, once you give a tenant a good house and they're a decent tenant and they know they can report repairs and they can do this, that and the other, like you don't hear from them. Like me and Sean have just been for breakfast. I'm just sitting here chatting to you guys. Like, what a nice it is.
But there has been so many, like I've wanted to like make a few notes because I have taken some more tips from this episode actually. So thank you so much, Vicky, for sharing all these tips. And
we want to say as well that Vicky is actually going to be starting a podcast where she is having her own tenants on. So if you really want to learn from Vicky and also from her tenants, you can take a lot of great tips. If you're a tenant
how
too,
she communicates with her tenants and just see the kind of a relationship that they have. And that
I mean, I've already been planning more things as well. So my friend's a mental health nurse, so I'm going to be talking to her about how to talk to people who are maybe going through difficult situations like losing their job or illness. You know, like one of my tenants had to just leave work. She just got this spinal injury and had to leave work and go on PIP. And it's how to talk to people in those situations. If you don't want to talk to people in those situations, hopefully find a letting agent that will talk to people in those situations, or like move on. A lot of this stuff is not stuff that most people want to do to make X amount profit on their investment. And if you don't, then it's probably not, like, I know this sounds awful, and I think like a lot of this is about, I want more people who have the ability to do what you're doing, what I'm doing. But also at the same time, I want people who don't want that responsibility to really consider whether this is the path for them, because it is a vocation and it is something that you have to do.
The market's completely changed now, and what Vicky is doing is she's really bridging the gap from landlords to tenants and how to communicate to make sure, like, everything has changed, and we have to keep up to date with how we communicate and make sure that our investment stands the long haul with good tenants that feel like they're supported too.
Yeah, and you get so much out, like living a really, like, we don't live an outlandish life. Like, we live in a lovely house with a car and in a nice area, do you know what I mean? But we don't, like, we're going to Robin Hood Aqua Park for our holiday abroad, do you know what I mean? Like, we have 3 kids, so we're not living this lavish lifestyle, but we do live a lovely, easygoing lifestyle. But I get a lot out of what I'm doing as well. And I think a lot of people, if they really considered what they want out of life more than how much money they want to make, would make better choices in terms of what tenants they're taking on, in terms of what strategies they're going for. And I think it always sounds a bit woo-woo, but like think about yourself. Like if you're 25 and wanting to get into property, think about yourself at age 40 when you've got 2 kids and la 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 la, or whatever, you're age 40 and you want to be living in Japan and bloody wherever you want to live. Like think about that. Don't think about now I need to make X amount of money. That's not, because we don't do HMOs, we don't do any of that. Like we put people in 3-bedroom houses with an outdoor space and then say, cheerio, enjoy your house, see you later. And like we only hear from them if they've got a problem. And usually because we've kind of trained them into how we like to work, they'll solve their own problems. So they'll be like, Vikki, I've had to get a new washing machine. Can I pay £400 now and then £300 over the next 6 months, £50 a month? And I'm like,
it's making it work.
Thank you so much, Vikki. You literally are singing our song, like your message of just make life simple. Care about people.
People first, and the money will flow like after. I think that should be like the ethos for 2025 and ongoing. But to wrap up this episode, we started doing something new, so you can be our first person to answer this.
So it's complete this question, and it can be about life, it can be about business, it could be about property. But the question is, or the sentence is, honestly, the best lesson I've learned is.
I think it's start as you mean to go on. Like so like decide where you want to be and the life you want to live, and then work back from that point. We even did that. Obviously, we sold our business back in 2020, and someone said that to me at the start. Start your business as if you're going to sell it. So set up the processes, automate as much as possible, and it works for everything. And like I can see so that business I set up knowing I wanted to sell it. This business that I run as a landlord, I know that this is going to be my ikigai, like my life's mission is to give these people a home and sort of give that equity back to them. So have a really, as much as I own that property, they pay to live there, and where we should be on that sort of equal footing. And I think just start as you mean to go on. So how you want to be and the respect you want to have for what you do, like start from that point.
I love that.
I love that answer. Thank you, Vikki.
We're going to put Vicki's new podcast when it's released down in the show notes.
Yes, and we'll put it in our community group as well, because I think
Speaking of community group, Vikki and us, we're all in our honest community group, and we have little monthly catch up. So if you want to join in on the conversation, please join in. It's totally free.
When's the coffee morning again? It's the third
Thursday of every month.
Day of every month. We've only had one, but I love it already. It's like my favourite. Yeah, and like my podcast is a work in progress, but I am doing property mentoring as well. So it's vickybaptie.com. Dead easy.
We'll put that in the show notes or the description wherever this ends up.
Yeah.
Thanks again, Vikki. See you soon. Bye.